Okay, welcome everyone. This is Teany Hidalgo working for Latin Biz today, and I am super excited to be here with Stephen Hunt, who is a PhD and very knowledgeable in his work with HR leaders on how to increase workforce effectiveness in their organizations. He wrote a book called Talent Tectonics, and today we're going to talk about attracting and retaining talent in small companies and maybe a few side topics, depends on how it goes. Steve, please say hello and tell us a little more about yourself.
Great. Thanks for having me here, Tiani. I'm excited to talk with this group. I have a little personal background, I guess. Why I'm not Latino. I am part of Latino culture. My wife's Puerto Rican. My sister-in-law's Ecuadorian. And I like to say I'm fluent in not speaking Spanish.
Love it.
So my work is with SAP, which is a large technology company that, among other things, uses technology to help companies build their workforces and manage their workforces. And my background, though, as you mentioned, I'm an industrial organizational psychologist, and I really study how do we use technology to create more effective work environments, but also how the work environments we need to create are being changed often by technology. And that's what the book talks about, Talent Tectonics. It's not about technology. It's about how the nature of work is changing due to sort of large scale shifts into demographics and technology and things like AI and all that, and what we need to do to respond. And so I'm happy to have a conversation to share some of the things that I've learned from this work.
Wow, I'm really excited. I have a personal stake in this part of your work because I do some coaching, burnout coaching, and I support a lot of corporates. So I'm really excited to hear about what you have to say about the future of work. Okay, so let's get started. So first question is, what factors affect employee development in small versus large businesses?
The really big ones that don't change that much. People are people, regardless of whether we work for a small company or a large company. I think the big thing that does have an effect is the number of resources that are available and the number of job opportunities that are available. Obviously, in a larger company, there are more job opportunities and they often tend to have more resources for development. The job opportunities, but I think that's a little bit misleading because in a small company, on the resources now, one of the things that technology has changed is it used to be that large companies had all these training resources that small companies didn't have access to. Now, thanks to the internet, there's very few training courses, for example, that a small company couldn't get access to if it wanted to. And there's a lot of, organizations. I've worked with a company called Mineral, for example, that provides training specifically for smaller companies so they can access it, which is really nice. It's kind of democratizing the access to educational and training resources. On the side of job opportunities, in terms of actually, like climbing the ladder or moving up, in a smaller company, there's only so many things you can do. But what a small company has that often large companies don't have is it's a lot more ability to tailor jobs to individuals. When you work for large companies, often it's like, okay, you're a technical specialist 7, and this is what technical specialist 7 do. And, it's very structured and rigid. And whereas you're in a small company, it's more like, we need somebody to help with this or help with that or move around, and people can move around and try a lot more things. And so I think in that, while you may not have the number of jobs, the jobs you have in a small company have the potential to be a lot more interesting because you have a lot more control over them. As a matter of fact, as a small company, often you have to make jobs really flexible because it's like, we got to get this done and somebody needs to do it. And so it's got to be one of us, whether it's part of our quote job or not.
And it's also probably more cost effective for one person to handle multiple roles rather than hiring for every single one, since it's a small team.
Yeah, which is that variety, I think, is a big part of development. I think that I've worked for small companies like small startups and stuff, and the amount that you learn in a small company is amazing because you get to do so many different things. That is provided on one caveat that the leader of that company supports flexibility, supports people in learning, which I think is a different topic. But, I think also in a small company, you have so much more control over the learning culture. I think in a big company, it's big, it can kind of become bureaucratic. In a small company, the culture is largely a reflection of the owner. And if the owner is a supportive person that believes in coaching and people enables it, that's going to permeate the organization. If the owner is not believing in coaching and development, that's going to be really clear too. So, but as a small business owner, you have tremendous control over the culture of your company.
I love it. Having worked for big corp, I totally understand what you're saying about everything being super, super targeted. Although I have seen a lot of movement across disciplines. I've done it myself. So it's not unheard of, but it's certainly much more difficult and requires a lot more training and things like that.
Yeah, well, big companies are really focusing on that. It's actually really funny. I mean, you talk to people in big companies and they're always like, we want to act like a small company. And they are, and larger companies are doing this. I mean, a lot of the technology, most of the companies I work with are very large companies. And one of the reasons that they want technology from SAP is a lot of this technology enables them to act like much smaller companies by doing just what you said, allowing people to find new opportunities, move into new parts of the organization. But in a big company, it's much harder to do that because it's so big. In a small company, it's not just easier, it's necessary. You need people to work on multiple things.
Right. Makes sense. Okay. So how has technology removed barriers to development facing small companies?
As I had mentioned earlier, the biggest thing is the access to like tangible training resources. There's two sides of development. There's what you might call tactical or concrete knowledge. I want to learn how to program Java, or I want to learn how to fix that machine. Well, there's like things you learn, skills, capabilities that you have to kind of, we used to read books. Now we go on YouTube, but you go in and you look at this and you learn how to do it. That used to be that large companies had a lot of these training resources and smaller companies didn't have access to them. Now everyone has access to them. So as a small company, one, a lot of the stuff that you want, you can probably find in some cases just on the open internet. Obviously, you need to be careful to make sure that what employees are learning is accurate if it's sort of unfiltered content. But also there are a lot of organizations that provide learning catalogs, training catalogs that you can access as a small company. The other side of learning is around culture, though. And as I said, culture and development and learning on the job, that isn't as affected as much by technology. It's affected by how the company is run.
What do you think is more important, or maybe they're both important, in terms of accessing technology versus creating that culture of learning on site kind of thing?
Culture is, well, I want to say that culture is the more important, I say long term. I mean, obviously, if it's some tactical thing like I need to know how to fix this machine, well, you need to be able to get access to that knowledge. But that's a very solvable problem, right? The culture is far more important. And there's a couple like critical things when you look at the culture of learning. The first is the biggest thing that impacts culture is job design, how you actually, what is it you ask people to do, and management, how people are managed when they're doing it. And so when you look at a company, if you're like a small company and you bring people into the organization, first of all, thinking of people as like, sometimes you hear the analogy of building a company is like building a house. We're going to design it, we're going to hire people, and we're going to build this house. That is the wrong analogy when you're talking about people. You are cultivating a garden. You are bringing people in, they're going to grow, they're going to change over time. A healthy garden doesn't stay the same. But you also can't stop it from changing. It's going to change. The question is it changing in a way that is positive for our business? So when you bring people into the organization, think of people constantly as growing and changing over time. Now, this is also important too, because one of the things that's affecting all businesses is the pace of change in the world is accelerating. However your company operates right now, it's going to need to operate differently in 3 or 4 years. The way you deliver processes is going to change. Your technology, customer expectations are going to change. Your market is going to change. And so you really need to manage with change in mind. And your single biggest resource as an organization for dealing with change is people. One of the biggest myths about people is that we fear change. We don't. We fear poorly managed change, change that will hurt us. And we're kind of wired to be skeptical about change. But actually, the ability to adapt to changing environments is the competitive niche of humans as a species. We're really good at it. It's called learning.
Right.
And the key is creating that environment that taps into that amazing ability for learning. And that's why I think small companies often have a big advantage over large companies, because you can create this culture of learning. Because if you're the leader of this company, you have tremendous influence on the culture, but you have to consciously realize that managing people for learning and adaptability is different from managing them for productivity. We are most productive when we're doing stuff we already know how to do. And that's all about efficiency and things like that. But when you're managing people to learn and grow, it's a different way of approaching them. And I'm definitely, I think we'll probably dive more into that if you'd like to.